came as a translator.
Oh, you speak.
And she and I were living together as much as you can live together when you sleep in hammocks with 6 other people and climb off a boat every night and tie them in the trees. But anyway, we were living together.
But he was autistic.
And he came. It's hard to explain. There's a phenomenon happening in South America, which thank God you don't meet in India. And it has to do with nut religions. The New Jerusalem. People who are generally fruitarian. And, well, there's no way to put it except absolutely nuts. It's like a tribe of people who since 1962 or 3 have been drifting down through Mexico, chiseling on each other, living with each other, hating each other, intrigues. Right. And at one time it was called what? The Rainbow Family Peace?
No, something.
Anyway, they communicated with these things called the beings of light, and they communicated with them through Ouija boards. And this whole mythology was built up around, I don't know, it's just very depressing to go into. But anyway.
But Mars Sector 6 in that?
I don't know, I don't think so. Everyone is a reincarnation. For instance, there's one guy who thinks he's the reincarnation of Rasputin, and named Robin. Another guy, this guy who was a refugee from the Hare Krishnites, who wears white robes and white rubber boots. He's the reincarnation of Erwin Rommel. And then the leader, right, the central mystery of this whole group was Sia, right, who was Kume's acquaintance. Well, no, it has to be told for the record. And he was very strange and believed that he was had been several prominent people reincarnated. And I was in a funny place. I mean, my categories weren't too rigid. I just thought, happy hippies. We're all happy hippies. I've been in Asia. I don't know too much about how the universe is put together. Maybe Atlantis existed. Who knows? I mean, it seems unlikely to me. But, what do I know? But getting in with these people, it developed that there was
some insanity.
Right, a lot of funny categories that couldn't be tolerated. Because Sia would, if he didn't want you to do something, he would just have sort of a blank look for a minute, and then announce that it had been revealed to him on the instant by the beings of light that you shouldn't open tomato cans with knives. Or anything else. I mean, in other words, the last minutiae of existence was controlled by these hidden forces.
It was monkeys or dogs.
Right, and he had monkeys who had Christ incarnate in them. And they traveled with animals. I mean, monkeys, dogs, kittens, and they insisted that all the animals be vegetarian. So the animals, were twisted and scrofulous, and their eyes are going around in circles. And he's telling, this is Buddha, this is Christ, this is Hitler. It wasn't actually this nuts. I'm exaggerating for purposes, but it was, in his own head, it was this loose. We went down there. My brother was to join us. He was the impetus for the expedition. Sarah, Michael, Kumi, Dennis, me, and Sia. What we were looking for was, we were very interested in tryptamine narcotics. And it seemed from our experience that the problem with smoking DMT, have you ever smoked it? Well, if you have the pure stuff, it's just in a sort of class by itself as an experience. And it seemed to us that there was something very useful to be learned in that dimension. But the stuff that we had always been exposed to, you get about 100 seconds of flash, and then you're fighting your way down through level after level of shifting hallucination. You can't really make anything out of it. So we were saying, we need time in this dimension to figure out what's going on. So it happens that there's a tree, or a genus of trees, which grow in the New World tropic called Varrola. And there are about 6 species of these trees. And they're used as a resinous, the resin underneath the bark is used as arrow poison and snuff. And it's 5-methoxy-NN-DMT in large enough amounts to make it worth pursuing. And it has a fairly wide distribution over the Amazon basin as an arrow poison and a snuff. But in this one area, there are 3 tribes of people, Witoto, Bora, and Muinani, 3 language groups. And just this outrageously isolated and hard to get to place. And they take the resin from this tree and they roll it in the ash of another tree. And it's orally active. You can take it like a pill, and it lasts a couple of hours. This was the rat, right? And the rat came from the hallucinogen, and written by Schultes, who's the man who's the New World, or the expert on New World narcotic plants. He had never seen this drug, which was called ukuhe. He had just had it reported to him by this anthropologist named Horacio Calle, who was the only person, the only non-Indian person who had ever reported this narcotic. He taught at the University de los Andes in Bogota. So we inquired when we were in Bogota if he was there. They said, oh no, he's with his people. Right, he's with his people. So it turned out that his people were, in fact, Witoto, and they were about 110 kilometers from the village which was indicated as the center of this drug practice called La Chorrera. So it was 12 days, 11, 10, 12, 15, who knows, days down the river, down the Putumayo River, 6 days, from a place called Puerto Leguizamo, which Burroughs describes in the Yahe letters as looking like a town after a flood. And it's just nothing there, just stinking mud, corrugated tin shacks, tremendous heat, awful radios, filth, horrible. And that's the jumping off place. And you get a trading boat which goes down these rivers, takes it 4 weeks or something to get to Leticia, 900 miles away, and you just go down these rivers. So we arrive, right, in this town where no one ever comes. One hotel, we arrive. Sia with Koa, the collie who is Christ. Ron Ranella, the kitten who is Buddha, who has scurvy. Several monkeys of several species. Sarah Hartley with 150 tons of camera equipment. Michael Lasky, who is like a gay meditator. That was his role. A maker of pottery, an embroiderer of blue jeans, a happy flower child, right? Kume, Dennis, my brother, who had never been to a foreign country, 21 years old, who's the botanist, right? And about him, you'll hear more later. So much more. Sia, who hated my guts, she had left him in St. Augustine and come to Bogota, where they had kindly said we could have their apartment. So in the week or 2 weeks where we were getting together equipment, why, Kumi and I evolved a relationship, or the beginning of a relationship, which bummed Sarah Hartley outrageously. So there was a lot of karma about that, but it was all about, look, I like this girl, and this was the clinching argument for all these other people. She speaks Spanish. Now, are you seriously suggesting that we trek 22 days into the Amazon basin with no grip whatsoever on the local language? She has to come. So it was agreed that she would come. Meanwhile, Michael Lasky had telegrammed Sia. He didn't know anything about what was going on. Telegrammed Sia, invited him to meet us in Florencia and come with us to the Amazon basin. So we pile on this Air Force airplane and we land in Florencia, right? Michael, Sarah, Dennis, Kuming, and I, her dog, and 10 tons of equipment which was to be ported down the Amazon. Sia is at the airport waiting, thinking that his girl, who he's lived with for 3 years, has gone to Peru with the guy in white robes and the rubber boots, right? Actually, no. And so there's this fantastic freak out at the airport fence, which is all about, "Hi, Sia. Kumi and I will take one room at the hotel, and it was just, with there being no possibility of grace on anyone's part, telegraphing to him that since he had seen his lady last, her life space had been totally restructured and something else was going on. Well, I was freaking, but I'm sort of a milquetoast in that I hate karma. And so I thought, so he came into our room and he said, "Well, it doesn't look like there's anything here for me. I think I'm going to fly to Bogota." And I thought, wow, wonderful, thank God. So then he went away and went into communion with the beings of light and came back 2 hours later and said,
You can't find it without me.
"You can't find it without me.
That was his round.
You don't know anything about it. I'm a man of the forest." He was into this image of himself as the man of the forest. So I said, okay, so we'll fly to Puerto Leguizamo, right? That was the next jump. So we pile on an Air Force plane, and now we have him, his dogs, his cats. He was nuts. I mean, he wore robes, he had a staff, right, with blowing fajas. And we get to Puerto Leguizamo, and I assumed, that the boats leave Puerto Leguizamo very irregularly. And I thought we would have to wait, like maybe even 2 weeks wouldn't be unusual to have to wait. And this hotel is tiny, the food is terrible, and I figured, we're just going to rub up against each other and go apeshit, and then he'll go away and it'll be over with. Because he was being very unpleasant to her, and it was very strange karma for everyone involved, because I actually had only been with her 2 weeks, and I thought, these people have been together 3 years, they've been to the Orient together, what is going on? And, but it didn't happen that way. It turned out there was a boat tomorrow, right? And so within hours, this thing fell together, and we paid the 600 rupees or pesos or whatever it was to go down the river. And at dawn the next morning, piling all our animals, all, cameras, I Chings, butterfly nets, plant presses, formaldehyde, notebooks, PDB, Finnegan's Wake, all the things you must have to go into the Amazon basin. We get on this tiny trading boat, and they indicate that we are to have the area on top of the Coke bottles, right? There's 6 levels of Coke bottles with a tarp thrown over, and that's where we are to ride. And he says, it's 6 to 12 days to where we're going.
So you have to ride with.
So down this boat, right, and we're smoking dope. Puerto Leguizamo disappears. And the river, and the green, and the parrots, and the biting insects, and the scream of the birds, and the brown water, and the jungle is just absolutely impenetrable, right? And by this time, everyone hates everyone else's guts for some reason or another. And Sarah and Sia, who had about as much in common as Hitler and Stalin, are buddy-buddy, because, I've miffed Sarah because it turns out Diane was right, and there was a lot of hanky-panky going on in Canada, and now Sarah's about to forge the weld, and suddenly this other person appears, and it's not going well at all. And Dennis was just doing his trip. Michael was worrying about food. He was a chronic worrier. He was a New York gay meditator. He had no business being in the Amazon basin, and he was just... He thought you took off your shoes and you go to your Indian brothers and you want to learn the secrets of the forest, and they say, "Come, my son, come with us. You will learn the secrets of the forest." And when he actually was confronted with the Amazon jungle, he was freaking completely.
It was at the end of a boat gun.
Animals animals are falling off into the river once an hour. The captain of the boat hates our guts because we have to stop and drag these soaking monkeys out of the... So after 6 days, down the Putumayo River, which is the border between Colombia and Peru, we get to a place called El Encanto, which is just a police outpost. Then we wanted to go up another river which flows in there, the Caraparaná. We wanted to go to Dr. Calle. We said this is the only Spanish-speaking or
English.
The only English-speaking person who's ever dealt with this narcotic. He speaks Witoto. He's with his tribe. He is the only person who knows what it's like. We had a taxonomic plate of Varroa theodora. That was all we had. So we talked to the priest at this police station. He says Dr. Calle and his wife are with their tribe, and it's 40 minutes up the river. And he was horrified that we were there. Because, we looked like Haight-Ashbury hippies, and it was all about, how did you get here? How did you live to get this far? So he clearly didn't want us around the mission. So he pours us in his speedboat, and we go tearing up this jungle river, which is now a river so to hell and gone that you couldn't hardly expect to see anyone except Indians, and very few of them. We go up the river for about 40 minutes, and he dumps us on a sandbank, and there's a path through the jungle, and he says Dr. Calle's village is 1.5 miles down that trail. So we pile all the stuff, trunks and packs and plant presses and everything, chemicals, all the stuff, we just pile it on the sand. And the animals are chained, leashed, flying. We have parrots, everything, you name it. And we go trooping into this village. And we leave our stuff on the sandbank, go down the trail, say, we'll talk to Dr. Kai and see if they can put us up. Well,
what else could they do?
It's true that a village in nature like that is a very delicate thing. I mean, it had a population of about 32, with Dr. Calle and his wife 34, with us 40, of 6 of whom are, utterly incredible. I mean, like people from outer space. They just had never seen anything like this. So...
Have they seen white men before?
Dr. Calle.
But he's Colombian. His wife is English.
His wife was English. She turned out he was about 34. A Marxist, a woman hater, and a coke addict. A paranoid coca, chewing the coca.
7 o'clock in the morning, you see him, he's got coca.
And a Marxist, and a woman hater. And this tribe of people were women haters. So little Isabella, right, who's an English girl, an anthropologist in her own right, Horacio tells her that in order to integrate into this society, she has to take the women's role upon herself. And this has to do with pounding yucca root with stones, right? And making coca, which the women are not allowed to chew at all. And the men lie around, they bugger the children, and they lie around in hammocks and listen to transistor radios and chew the coca. And the men never sleep. And the women live with the dogs and the children underneath the houses. And the men live in the houses. And at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the women are all sent to the sleeping place with the children and the dogs, and the men all retire into the big longhouse for storytelling and coca chewing till 4:30 in the morning.
It sounds like a pretty sophisticated society.
Believe me, we've lived with these people elbow to elbow. The fart is the most highly evolved form of humor in this society. There are 10,000 variations on the fart and how it may be done, and all are riotously funny to all of these people. So Dr. Calle was aghast. And I said, Doctor, we're interested in Varroa theodora, the resin. I understand the people here make it into a narcotic, which they call... Don't say that word. do you want to wreck everything? Now listen to me. It was all about, you can't say this word. Although it turned out Michael Lasky, as we were trooping up from the boat, had said to the guy walking along beside him, "Quiere usted ukuhe?" Right, and the guy said, "Ay, ay, ay," went rushing to the witch doctor. So by the time this warning had been given, everyone and their dog for 50 miles knew that we were after the super secret, never can mention, old men only know about, never tell to strangers, magical drug, right? So Kaye said we could stay there, but it was clear that he was very, very bummed. And so they gave us a house at the edge of the village. And the people were and he was nuts. It began to develop. He said we had to say we were all brothers and sisters, because it would upset their view of social relations if anything else were said. And the people clearly knew, more than Kaye. He was on a noble savage trip and was trying to protect his Indians from these crazy hippies. And he had apparently been ruling his wife with an iron hand, and we had just walked in on this very peculiar scene where, he was getting more and more wigged out on coke. Stranger and stranger, I would walk along. I would be butterfly collecting in the jungle, and I would come around a tree, and there would be Dr. Kaye with a wooden spear crouched, and he was... I say, "Oh, sorry, doctor, excuse me." And he would walk along these trails carrying a machete, tossing it from hand to hand and saying, "The dangers are everywhere. It isn't possible to be too careful. It's in the trees. It's in the bush. It's under the surface of the rivers. It lurks everywhere. Of course there are snakes and he was just, for him, he lived in a world of nightmare hallucination brought on by coke addiction. And his wife hadn't had any white people to talk to for 6 months, and she was wondering what's going on, and she wasn't allowed to do coke. And he was just, he was behaving like a Witoto male member of the tribe. God, I saw him freak out one afternoon. He was talking to these people. It's a very macho culture, and your woman is always supposed to be right there. And he was talking to these people, and it developed that they needed a machete. And he stood up and he said, "Isabel!" And she didn't come. And he said, "Isabel!" And he wouldn't go look for her. He was just standing there, and all these people were standing, looking at each other. And he kept calling, and finally she came, and he was just white. And he was shaking. And he said, "Get the machete!" And so anyway, after about 5 days or so, Sia left. His tooth was rotting out of his head, and we gave him all the painkiller we had, which was supposed to last us for 3 months.
What kind of painkiller?
Codeine?
It was Sarah's trip. Her father's a doctor. She ran the drugs. It was codeine or Seconal. I don't know what it was. But it was all about getting bearers, and when the men came back from the hunting party, we would get bearers. And we wanted to go 110 kilometers. Kaye would tell us almost nothing about this drug. He said, "Ridiculous. You're not going to get it. These people don't speak Spanish even. They speak only Witoto. There were 40,000 of them killed here 50 years ago. They have no reason to like you. It's super secret. And essentially, you're idiots. What the hell are you doing here? Get out of the jungle while you still can." So we got bearers, and it was 4 days to this place we were going called La Chorrera, which we knew nothing about. All we knew was that on the map of the distribution of this drug usage, it was right smack in the center, in a fairly tiny area. So there was a big trail called Attractor that went through the jungle, 110 k's, and we got bears, and we crossed it in about 3 days, and got to La Chorrera. It's a mission.
But you forgot to tell that you turned back. Sia.
Oh, right. Sia came with us. And I turned him back, the first morning out, I was getting more and more PA. And I decided that milk toast or no, I was going to have to break the bubble because it was getting weirder and weirder. He was doing things like, he insisted on going first, and he was doing things like sharpening sticks and putting them, and for when we were going down the river before we got to El Encanto, we were just smoking dope all the time, and he would just sit and stare at me for hours and hours, and I finally understood that he was probably going to kill me, and that he was completely deranged, and that, strange as it may seem, this was my fate, that I was going to be bumped off by somebody's old boyfriend who was psychotic, who had somehow snuck on to this Amazon expedition. And so I stopped and I said something like that he was the world's most outrageous jackass. In other words, I just pitched the shit into the fan. And we were going to punch each other out right there. And Sarah was yelling and shouting. And the Witoto bearers were standing around open-mouthed at this freaky confrontation. He decided to turn back. It actually was he had no money, and he was also in terrific pain. And I just was, there was no reason for him to be there. He was really nuts. I mean, he was capable of anything. The stress of isolation and bad food makes you do strange things.
What about taking some coke or something? Would that have killed pain?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know.
He chewed coke, didn't he? He did some of that, but his mouth was just, being a vet, apparently if you're fruitarian, you can give your teeth about 5 years and then they just fall out of your head completely and that's it. And he was into that stage. So we turned him back. We arrived at La Chorrera. After he was turned back, I just had an enormous flood of relief.
And we've never seen him.
This trail was beautiful. The Amazon jungle, butterflies, birds, and streams running across this trail. We were doing about 25 Ks a day, carrying 60 pounds apiece. We would stagger it, so you would have an hour off and 2 hours on. And it actually was an enormous physical feat. I think that we were already feeling the effects of what's come to be known as the phenomenon, but it's impossible to tell. But anyway, I'll get into that. Because we didn't eat anything. Like they announced that we would eliminate breakfast and lunch, the girls, because they were doing the cooking. And it was impossible to light a fire because the Amazon is so wet. And it was just too much of a chore. So we would get up at 4:30 in the morning, have coffee, and walk 25 Ks till about 3:30 in the afternoon.
I can't imagine doing it again ever. I mean,
right, we walked it once again the other way carrying nothing, and it was an ass buster, absolutely, and we were eating, I don't know, no, up and down, up and down.
And muddy, and you have to, like, you get to a river and there's no bridge, so you have to figure out how to get across.
And you have to keep the porters from stealing everything or running off. Some friends of ours, well, that's another story. But anyway, so we get to this place, La Chorrera. And our intent was to spend about 3 months very calmly, attempt to deal with the witch doctors in the area, and by that route attempt to find the Varroa tree. And if we couldn't do that, by the taxonomic route, by simply going into the jungle and looking for the tree, because we knew, or we thought we would be able to identify it if we were confronted with it. We had a good description of it. Planned to spend 3 months, and then thought we would leisurely leave, right? So we get there. It's a mission, but it was not the school time, so there was only a priest, a brother, and 2 nuns there. So they give us a house on the edge of the mission. We can stay there
for 2 days,
for a while until the professors come back. Our intent was to build or find a hut in the deep jungle and make our collections from that base. And just, it's sort of thing I did in Indonesia. No sweat, just jungle collecting. So we get there. There's a large area of cleared pasture, many, many acres of cleared pasture around this mission. And Michael Lasky, the place is unreal. When we first saw it, there was a rainbow standing over, thrusts up. Most of the Amazon basin is alluvial deposit from the Andes. the river narrows and flows over like into a crack and begins to flow very, very rapidly. And then it flows over an edge, a lip, and there's just a tremendous waterfall. Not exactly a waterfall, but a chute. It isn't a direct drop, but it's...
Like a rapid.
Right, but
exactly.
unbelievably violent. Right, exactly.
Just rocks, just...
Unbelievably violent, and it's made a big lake, which is called La Chorrera Bay or something. And very unusual situation for the Amazon. Very rarely can you rise above treetops, but here there were actually hills, and you could get up at altitude, and there were no stinging or biting insects. It's just a paradisical place. Phenomenal. I mean, to push that hard and to suddenly you're there, and it's beautiful, and the mist is drifting across the pastures, and there are white cows, and mission, and this huge lake, and jungle, this and that. But white cows, and therein lies a peculiar twist in the story, because we had come for Varrola theodora, but it turns out that Stropharia cubensis, which is a variety of psilocybin elaborating mushroom, grows, it appears, only in association with manure from white Cebu cattle. And they had a herd of about 50 of these white Cebu cattle there. Michael Lasky went out the morning after we got there into the pasture, and the pasture was full of these mushrooms. I mean, there were hundreds of them. They were everywhere. And
this had been sweeping Colombia.
Right, it had been seen in Colombia.
I mean...
They had taken it at Puerto Leguizamo, but I hadn't taken it, or I had taken one, but I hadn't got off. And I have never particularly gotten off on a plant drug, and I just view it as... or I viewed it at that time as sort of something that you had to be very lucky, that most plant drugs were about being half poisoned and half suggesting yourself into something. So we took, they said, we'll take a trip tonight, we'll take a trip. And so in the afternoon we walked out in the pasture, and we each took about 5 mushrooms, and we got stoned. And it was phenomenal. I mean, I had never gotten so easily and deeply stoned. It was much stronger than hash. It was like acid, but with no dimension of anything you couldn't handle. It was just like you got happy, you were hallucinating furiously, you felt good, and you felt good. And now, were there 2 trips or one? There were 2 trips. Right. So we took it, and it was great. We were all totally...
Dennis went looking
and that was that night.
The light.
Was that night or the next? That was the first trip. Right. So Michael, Dennis said after we all got high, he said, well, now here we are. We're in the Amazon jungle. We're here to encounter something which is not rational. We're smashed on the local dope. We should attempt to contact something which isn't rational. We should choose the most skeptical person and the most suggestible person.
Dennis and Michael.
No, didn't he decide it would be me and he and I, and Michael and I?
Oh, right.
And we should send them out into the pasture. It's pitch dark. It's the middle of the night. To send them out into the pasture to look at the mushrooms, to see if they glow. Because, in Castaneda's book, the peyote glow when you're on peyote, or he insisted on this point, that you could see across the valley. You could see it studded with glowing peyote. So I said, sure, it doesn't matter. Let's go charging out to the pasture. So Michael and I went out to the pasture, and it was, the fog was drifting, and it was misty, and just very...
And here you are looking for cow pies.
Right, looking for cow pies with mushrooms, with glowing mushrooms on. And we're stoned on this very weird drug, which makes you feel very warm and happy and kind of, psilocybin. And found some mushrooms, nothing was glowing, just wandering around, the drizzle on my glasses, this and that. And then Michael says, there's a light. light. There's a light. And I looked across through the drifting stuff, and there was, in fact, a kind of a light, a kind of a round light. And so we went back and we told them, this isn't pertinent, I shouldn't waste so much time on it, I should cut through. But anyway, Dennis came out, and he and I were there, and he saw the light as well. He was stoned and I was stoned. We were falling all over each other. But we couldn't see the house, and so it was all about, we can follow this light, but we better not get too far away or get lost, because we didn't know the area at all. We followed it, and sometimes it would seem like it was just, maybe 20 feet ahead of us, and like it had fallen. It seemed like it was hovering in the air, but then it would seem like it had fallen into the grass, and there was this light filtering back through the grass, and you would run forward, and then it would be again ahead in the air, and finally we got way out there, and it started to flicker, sort of, and then I saw that it wasn't flickering, that something was passing back and forth in front of it, occluding it, and then I thought I saw, that it was someone dancing around a fire in the middle of this rainy pasture. And that was, in fact, I'm sure, what it was. And we just retired in confusion and went to bed. And the next morning I got up, and the most impressive thing about the trip was that it was just great dope. It was just the best dope in the world. I mean, it just seemed like this was what the psychedelic experience is hitting all around. This feeling, this kind of control, but this extremely strange state of reality. So we decided we would do it the next night, the next day in the afternoon. And so we did it. Oh, and I had a mortar and pestle, and I was at the same time grinding some up to make snuff out of. And so we took it, and we were all sitting around waiting to get stoned, and there was a lot of nitpicking between Sarah and Dennis, who Dennis had not come forward as a personality at all in this situation. Well, yes.
Continue.
So finally, he just came. He said, you're pretty weird, and I'm going to tell you why. And I was sort of delighted because he was doing my opinion of Sarah. And there was no karma involved for me at all. Somebody else was just rapping it down to her where she was out of line. And, but then I felt very strange because I felt like Sia. And I said, weird. I feel like this guy. I mean, I don't know what this guy feels like, but I feel like I imagine he must feel. And then...
Dennis is acting like you.
And we were trying to smoke dope, right? And I was saying, you want to hallucinate, push dope. Smoke, would you smoke? And he was fumbling with the matches. And I said, and he was fumbling, and I said, what's the problem? Just light the match. Would you light the match? And, and everybody was just crossed up. And so we came down. It didn't seem, and then it just seemed strange. And I wanted to pursue it the next day more. But either the next day or very shortly, this Indian guy came and said, my father is a witch doctor.
You want yahe?
You want yahe, don't you?
Because that's the big drug.
That's the big drug.
True.
I mean, that's the one you can get up for the asking.
Well,
this ukuhe, you dare not mention.
But yahe.
Because, see, at La Chorrera, a month or two before we had arrived, there'd been a murder between two witch doctors, having, in fact, a murder and then an attempted murder. And it all had to do with ukuhe. Supposedly, the shaman who had murdered this guy's brother had painted the top rung of a ladder with this resin. And when the guy had grabbed the top of the ladder, the resin had absorbed through his fingers, and he had gotten dizzy and fallen off.
And then Luciano's wife or son.
That's fantastic way of doing it.
Right, and so the shaman, whose brother had been killed, struck back at this guy by, it was felt, this guy's grandmother, mother, and child had been in a canoe. Wife, daughter, and child had been in a canoe above the Choro, and they had been swept over it, and it was said that this was magic, and the grandmother had lived, but it was said that this old man had tried to kill them magically for doing this. Anyway, it was not the time to be asking about Ukuhe, clearly, because the dead and dying littered the field. So this guy came and he said, Yahe, a day up the river, this and that. So Kumi and I said, we'll go, because she speaks Spanish. None of the rest of them did. And so we'll go. We went and we stayed overnight at their Maloka, and we got the Yahe, and we got enough to get stoned, and we got a living plant they gave us. So we came back, and to find that we had been told we had to leave this house. And so far, everything seemed more or less normal. The usual amount of hassles, bad karma. It was true, we were very lucky to find the mushroom and to find the Yahe. But it all seemed more or less, okay. And we moved down to...
But we moved to different houses.
No, not the first night. We all slept together. Mm-hmm. We moved to this small house they gave us, which was very exposed. And there seemed to be a kind of distance developing between, which was dividing us into two groups, Sarah and Michael Lasky, and Dennis, Kume, and I were the two opposing groups. So we spent this night in this small house, and it was very, very leaky and small. So the next morning they announced that they were moving to another house, just the two of them, and would leave us there, and we would all cook together there. So that night, we took the mushroom again, and this time I had made up some Yahe dust. And I discovered that when you were on the mushroom and you smoked Yahe, you would have these hallucinations, which it was just like vegetable television. I mean, and that's what we said. You just would take a hit and have, a 15-minute cartoon-like hallucination, and then it would fade, and you would take another hit, and it would happen again. And we did this for hours and hours, just delighted with the quality of this dope. So there was no physical come-down, no physical trouble getting on. You just take the mushroom, raw or cooked, and 30 minutes later, you're collapsed giggling where you sit.
Have you tried snuffing the spores of the mushroom?
We would grind it and do the whole mushroom. And we would make a Yahe and mushroom snuff and get off. We were snuffing it, eating it, and I said, that it was the perfect dope, and there was no reason to be restrained in any way, and you could just take as much of it as you wanted, and that this was it. So then, the next day, it was agreed that we would let it ride a day, and wouldn't get stoned, and that the next day we would take a big trip. We were experimenting with the dosage, so the next time we'll take a big trip. We took
25 apiece.
Kumi, Dennis, and I took 25 apiece. Michael and Sarah were supposed to come up to our house about 3 p.m. to get stoned. That's Amakar. He hasn't missed anything. I've just bored you to death. Because I can't tell a story any way but straight.
Wait a second.
Okay, so they weren't living in the hut that we were living in. They had moved away. They were supposed to come up at 3 p.m, and we had agreed we would all take 25 each. And so,
each of what?
Stropharia cubensis mushrooms. Because we had been playing with the dosage, and it was just outrageous dope, and so we decided we'd push it. So they didn't come, and we waited, and about 5:30, we just decided, well, they're doing a trip on our heads, they're either busy or something, and they're not going to come, or they're going to come later.
This is Sally Hartley and
Michael Lasky.
So we took these mushrooms, 25 of them. The most we'd ever taken before was 6. And after an hour, it got dark, and it didn't seem to me that we we got stoned. We were just sitting on our hams, but it didn't seem to me that we were more stoned than we had been before. It was just the mushroom state had manifested itself. We were sitting around rapping. And my father, who was in the United States, Dennis, the last letter that Dennis had gotten from him before he went into the Amazon, said they were going to go golfing in San Diego. And Dennis did this rap about how he was worried that they hadn't gone to San Diego to go golfing because he hadn't been able to get a letter out to them, and he thought maybe it was spoiling their vacation. Or my father's vacation, my mother had died, spoiling his vacation because he was waiting for us. And I said, that's ridiculous. There's no way we can get word out of here. The airplane comes once a month. We're stoned. Why are you hassling about there's no way to get word out of here? And outside it was just absolutely pitch black. And an Indian walked by about 100 yards away in the darkness with a transistor radio going. And it went, and it got louder, and then it started to fade away. And I was just, in my reveries, and suddenly my brother he made a very funny noise. Right. he made a very funny noise, and he said, wow, that's pretty strange. I think I'll try and do that again.
Was that a DMT-like noise?
It was not the kind of noise that I associate with a DMT-like noise. It was, however, a very strange noise. I could do it for you. It was just weird. It sort of unsettles me to do it, but...
Oh, do it.
You're on record.
I'll pass on that. In any case, so he said, wow, it's really strange. And it didn't sound to me particularly strange. It sounds like this. He was going, and I said, well, strange sound. You like it? Do it some more. So he did it some more. And then suddenly he jumped up and he was yelling and he said, I don't want to become an insect. I don't want any of it. And he was just freaking. And I said, what's going on? What's going on? And he said, well, for years there's been this rap about this sound you hear on DMT, which is very peculiar, which is in fact so peculiar that if you experience it, it completely liquefies your categories and you're blown.
That's the sound that the Christian mystics used to call the flapping of the angel wings. Is that the one? The helicopter?
I don't know. It seems different for other people. For me, it's like a language that's moving so fast that I can't quite make it with my mouth. But one of the reasons we wanted to take a lot of DMT was the feeling was that if you could make the sound, or if you could imitate it perfectly on DMT, you could cause something to happen, which in its most radical version, what this something would be that you could crack the barrier between physical and mental space, and you could make this ectoplasmic stuff flow into 3D. And I had an experience with a girl in Nepal where a lot of this stuff came out of her body, and it was just very confusing and fairly out-of-hand situation on the roof of a building in Nepal. So my brother became very agitated, and he said, it was all about, you've heard the sound, I don't know Kumi very well, now I'm hearing the sound. We have to get an objective observer in here because it's just too strange what's going on. And he said, where is Sarah? And he just got deeply into wanting her to come. And he would go to the front of the hut. It was pouring rain. It was pitch dark. The hill was very steep. And he said, where is she? Where is she? I can't believe this. And so finally he convinced us we had to go find her, even though it was pouring rain. We clambered down out of the hut, down the ladder. We were standing in the mud. It must have been 11 o'clock at night. It was pouring. The hill, you couldn't see anything. And I just said, I don't know what's going on, but I'm taking control of the situation because I'm not going to go trooping down. So I talked him into waiting till morning. He was very excited. We all crawled back in our hammocks and waited till morning. We went tearing down to the other house, and Dennis got Sarah, shook her out of her hammock and said, we took a lot of mushrooms last night, and I was able to make some kind of sound like the sound that he's talking about. And it's the first time anyone has ever been able to verify that this thing was an objective reality. And he was just very excited. And she said, and so he went off by himself. And we went through a 3-day period, which was all about, he was very excited. And he talked about this all the time, about this sound. And he linked it to, there's a very strange phenomenon, which is in Hirivo shamanism. It's a tribe in Ecuador, the people take yahe. And they and other people who have taken yahe, but no one else, can see this it's described as violet or deep blue, and it bubbles, and it's like a liquid, and you vomit it. When you vomit from taking yahe, this purple goo comes out of your body, and it can not only be vomited or regurgitated, it forms on the surface of your skin like sweat. And the Hirivo, this is what they do all their magic with, is this peculiar goo, and they say that they spread it out on the ground in front of them.
Isn't that because they're completely hunger-oriented?
that they regurgitate? But anyway, they said, you can look at this stuff and you can see other times and other places in it. It's made out of something completely transnormal. It's made out of space-time, or it's made out of mind, or it's pure hallucination, objectively expressed, but always keeping itself within the confines of this liquid. I don't know if you've read the teachings of Don Juan, but there's an instance in there where this entity, Mescalito, holds up his hand, and Castaneda sees his whole past, a past incident in his life, in the hand. And supposedly, if this stuff has an empirical validity, what's happening is a very thin film of this projective, transdimensional goo is there. And when you look at it, it's like feedback. It's a mirror, not of your physical reflection, but of who you are. But anyway, all this stuff lies in the realm of speculation. Does this stuff exist? Is it just a hallucination? Absolutely nuts. Who can believe anything like that? But Dennis said that the sound, that it was connected with sounds, and that you could either stabilize this stuff or cause it to appear by doing something with your voice. And he just would rap furiously, and it got us all very high, and it was a very strange idea, because you could extrapolate it infinitely, what this stuff could be, that if you could make it in 3D, it would become anything, this ectoplasmic, bubbling mind goo in the 4th dimension. What you just want to do is pierce the 4th dimension and have this stuff come boiling out. So he talked a lot about it, we cut down the mushroom intake, except I kept taking it. I was just ecstatic. I thought it was a wonderful idea. Totally, I felt it had, it was just another idea from the tryptamine ocean that had floated up into our nets, and what could we do with it? But Dennis was spending a lot of time by himself, and finally, after 3 days of this, he came in the afternoon, and he said, I've been giving it a lot of thought. And you know what we could do? And I had been listening to these raps, all this technological, scientific, chemical stuff, which I know nothing about or knew nothing about. And he is very deeply into it. And it was just coming out of him like spaghetti out of a rasher, just shooting into the air. Words about all these strange things. He said, you know what we can do? And he laid down this rap, which is now enshrined as the central doctrine of the opus. It's called hypercarbellation, and it's something you can do, and you have to well. How can I put it? Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. There's a way it can be done, which is described in the book. Oh, shall I put it? Well, you're using sound, right? And you're using different kinds of sound to cancel various kinds of sound. For instance, you know that if you pluck a string, that it will sound in the, what is the term? The key. The key in which it is struck, it will sound. But in octaves above and below this key, it will also sound. It has what are called harmonic overtones of itself. Well, now, if you strike the chord and then kill it, you can hear these harmonic overtones vibrating down the string. This fascinated Pythagoras, of whom we will hear more later. But anyway, Dennis said, well, now another phenomenon that's known is you can use sound, you can use two sounds to cancel a sound if they're exactly the same and they're coming onto each other. And this can be used to still molecular motion. In very localized areas, in very small areas, you can produce very low temperatures with audio cancellation through sound. And so Dennis said that he had figured out a way. Here's what he said. He said, there's a group of psychoactive compounds, right? Beta-phenylethylamines, mescaline, psilocybin, the tryptamine complex, and then the harmala compounds, beta-carbolines, the things which occur in yahe. Dennis said that if you look at the molecules of this progressive cyclicizing of the beta-phenylethylamine family, that what you see, or what you know, is that the electron spin resonance of these molecules as you move from one to the other is, in fact, a harmonic. Interesting, because Naranjo reported that 50% of his subjects who took yahe in Chile reported a buzzing in the head that was not reported on other kinds of psychedelics that seemed to be uniquely associated with these harmine compounds. A buzzing in the head. And the Hirivo shaman, they hear a buzzing in the head and they buzz. And there's something about buzzing connected with it. So Dennis said, you take yahe, you have it metabolizing through your neural matrix in the brain, and you hear...
You eat mushroom.
Right. And you hear a sound. Because you have tryptamines, well, there's a complicated theory about the enzymal dynamics by which you're able to hear this sound. But in any case, by some means...
Wait a second, Terry. This is the only way in which it's distinguished from any other chemical that you eat, right? Because they all have harmonic resonances that are perfect and make sense.
No, not all.
Everything you eat.
No, not all compounds have electron spin resonation. You have to have a free ring. All compounds with a free ring will do that, but apparently some things don't. I don't really understand.
And these compounds are the ones that don't. I mean, that's the definition of like. That's what makes them whatever it is, tryptamine.
Oh no, they just as a quality of being matter have the electron spin resonations. DNA has it. Complicated organic compounds usually have broadband NMR.
Resonation.
Right.
Right. That's what I wanted to.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenon of molecular structure.
But these, there's a certain enzymal thing that makes you able to hear them.
When it yes. It's through the process of metabolizing, and that there's a relationship to the tryptophan metabolites in the brain. But so, once you hear this, you hear it, and then you can imitate it. And then what you have is a sound, a buzz, which you make. But Dennis said you can do things with this sound if you know what the sound is and what to do it with. Since it is an amplified electron spin resonation sound, if you have perfect pitch, or if you can pass through perfect pitch even for a few milliseconds, you will be emitting an amplified ESR spin modulated sound that you're getting off these compounds in your brain. Now when you do that, it will set up a series of harmonic vibrations above and below it in other compounds which are metabolizing in your brain. Well, no, then what happens, now we take flight from this theoretical basis. When you cancel it, if you're in the correct relationship to the molecule that you're directing the
Cancellation.
what sound at, right? Its temperature will drop, or of many millions of this kind of molecules struck by this sound, a few dozens or hundreds will be in the correct geometrical relationship, and they will be frozen out. They will achieve absolute zero very instantly. Now, a peculiar property of absolute zero phenomenon is that bonding, very high bond energies appear. A molecule which is at absolute zero will bond to anything. It just forces its way into the structure. So Dennis said the harmine molecule, which looks like a little bell and gives this bell-like chiming, buzzing sound, he said, if you come on it right and you cancel it, and there's neural DNA active in the brain, the molecular configuration of harmine is enough like the molecular configuration of one of the base components. It actually is adenine that it replaces, that it will replace it, that it will bond through into the chain and bond in. And when it's bonded in, it has this ring. It's the same size as adenine, but it's a little more complicated, and it has this resonance ring which is free. And he said, now the normal ESR of harmine is a simple signal, but, and he said this then, and we've researched it since, and it's true, the electron spin configuration of DNA is very, very complicated. It's a broadband signal. Very, very complicated. He said when you put the harmine in there, it will cease to broadcast its own ESR resonation because it's very tightly bonded into the overstructure of this macromolecule. It will begin instead to broadcast the ESR resonation of the DNA. And he said that DNA, well, that's it. If you followed it this far, the rest is easy. DNA is what you are. The physical form is just a lot of juicily expressed reflections of enzymes set in motion and coded by the DNA. They've discovered neural DNA is non-metabolizing. It does not go away. Your skeleton comes and goes every 6 months. All the meat on your body isn't what it was 4 years ago, except your neural DNA. It is there for all time. You come into the world.
Just recording your karma as you
right
through all these different bodies and scenes.
And it records. It's like a storage place for memory. Not only your memory, but any entity, any organism which has DNA in it, there is a way to find a connection to. And he said, this is it. You put a radio into the DNA, and this ESR resonation will begin to flood your system because the bond will be permanent. There will be no way to disrupt it. And it will tell you everything. It will tell you everything that can be known in the world of space and time, because it contains
all your records
and everyone else's records, and we're all connected through this magical substance, which is what makes life possible and which causes it to take on its myriad forms. All DNA is the same. It's just the combination, the settings are different. You get butterflies, mastodons, human beings, T4 phage bacteria. It manifests.
How people see harmonics.
Right, totally.
So the wavelength can be short enough. As it gets shorter and shorter and shorter, finally it gets in the range of where the spaces in the molecule are.
About 8
And
angstrom
then
units.
they can start to affect the molecules.
Right.
That's why whenever you hear the good chanters, like those two ladies that came to our house that night on the Nam Myoho Renge Kyo 15-year, they produced, with very little effort on their part, they produced this extremely high bell-like sound.
Right, sound.
It was existed completely outside of them. It wasn't localized.
Yes, you can do a lot of things with sound. So anyway, he came and said, I figured this out. This is what you can do. And he was just, and I didn't know anything about it. I mean, my beat was Jungian psychology and, kind of slush-mindedness. I wasn't into superconductivity, simultaneous differential calculus, and that kind of thing. And so he said, we must set up an experiment. We must attempt to do this. We have everything here necessary to do it. We have Yahe, which is our source of harmine. We have Stropharia cubanensis, which is our source of tryptamine. We can metabolize the tryptamine. We have it metabolizing in another form of life, i.e. the mushroom. There's no one around. We can do it. And he just retired into a world of very intense activity, and he wrote it over and over again, the steps, the theory, why it should work. And we moved into the forest. This was the thing. These Indians were living in a house that we were due to take, and they finally got their shit together and moved off. And so we had been told that when they left, we could move to this hut. And Dennis would just spend lots of time alone writing furiously, or he would come back and talk to us. And he was on to something very strange. I mean, his word pictures caused reality to shimmer and crinkle at the edges. I mean, he was really in touch with this bubbling obsidian 4D fluid that we were going to bond into a usable tool and end history and go to the stars and explode the sun and end it all. And so we said, fine, so we'll try it. And, the atmosphere was just drenched with tryptamine. I mean, now we had come to the center of the Amazon, and you could feel it in the sky watching you. And you said, oh, God, we thought it was nothing, just happy heads trying to explode one last fairy tale so we could be rationalists forever. And now we've come out here, and, it's enormous, and it's alive, and it's, very old and very strange and just peculiar in every extremity. So we moved to the house. We planted our garden. We worked very hard. I was totally uncreative in this period. I was taking the mushrooms. I was ecstatic all the time. And I would just sit and listen to him do this rave and just go away. I just don't know. I've never beat anything Parker or Watson or anyone had ever dished up. But so we decided we would do it on the 4th of March. And there's a riddle connected with this, which is what day of the year is a command? March 4th, right? Which was a riddle that had come out of my childhood. I've just known that always, that March 4th is a command. Well, actually, we didn't get it together until March 5th, but it was in the early morning. Right? We decided we would take the mushroom in the evening, and we would move into this thing. Now, at the same time, there was a little bit of friction developing between Sarah and Michael because they were frightened. I mean, they just said, wow, I thought we were going to collect plants. And Dennis was just, raving about superconductivity and harmonic cancellation and the gnosis from beyond the Crab Nebula and ending history and calling the starship from wherever it was and meeting the teacher. And it was true that over this whole incident was spread this overpowering presence which we called the teacher. And you met it in hallucination, and you could feel it day and night. And it was like an insect, 160 feet tall or something. It was just, and it wouldn't let you see it, but its presence was so overwhelming that it kept popping into your subliminal vision what it must look like and just blowing your mind. And the sun is shining down and the Amazon jungle is growing and screaming and the insects are screaming, and we're walking down these sun-drenched paths with the full expectation that you're going to come around the corner and deal with the ectoplasmic unimaginable. And so we moved to the house. And he had decided exactly how it should be done, how the experiment should be done, and that we would bring a living mushroom. We would dig up the shit around it, and we would physically move the whole thing to the hut so that it would still be metabolizing the mushroom. And then we would prepare the tryptamine, and then we would prepare, because we wanted to do this bonding in the mushroom, because we thought the absolute zero phenomenon might kill you if it happened in a human being. We didn't know. It was wide open. Mm-hmm. There was even talk about the possibility of triggering fusion processes by mistake. And this is all with sound, right? With your voice, a mushroom, and a human mind, you can do this. And that's all you need. Accelerators, all of that. No, with the energy, hundreds of times less than the energy in an ordinary flashlight, you can probably just rend space apart like a rotten handkerchief. So we moved to the house, right? And he brought in all the stuff. Well, that night, Sarah fell. When you go into the house, it was just a log cut with notches in it. And she fell, and she sprained her ankle very badly. And Michael Lasky just was freaking freely. It was a very clear night, and suddenly, billowing up to 40 or 50,000 feet, there was this enormous stratocumulus cloud, and lightning, and wind moving across the jungle. And he just said, it's madness. I don't know what's going on. I just want to go back to New York and make pottery. Please. So it was decided that they would not be present, that Michael and Sarah wouldn't be there, that they would go back to the river house and act as a control. So,
control yourself,
we had cleared an area in the jungle, or some Indians had, and we had pulled out all the stumps 2 days before, and we had made this huge pile of stumps. And since 9 o'clock that morning, we had been slowly burning this pile of stumps into a fierce fire that was boiling our yahe. And we had scraped the yahe 16 or 20 feet of yahe, and it was boiling furiously. And the liquid actually does get a kind of purple-violet phosphorescence on the top of it. It floats. And they say that when it boils, it's very weird. You can hear the ESR. It's so, the ring structure of it is apparently so volatile that all you have to do is boil a large amount of it, and it squeals.
Is that why they cry when you pull them out of the ground?
Well, they don't like being pulled out of the ground. I don't know, I'm a skeptic myself. But anyway, it was definitely true that you could put your ear near this pot and it would be going... like that, and it was phosphorescent and violet, and so we boiled it for hours and hours and hours. We had dinner, and they left about 9:30, who knows. And a very strange thing was happening, which was, well, the stars were obliterated. It was completely black. There was no way to know what time it was.
Okay.
And the candle burned over on its side, and it was like, it seemed to violate gravity, and it wasn't getting any shorter. And Dennis and Kume were, I was just frantic that they were going to tip over the yahe because they were getting clumsier and clumsier, and there was this tremendous effort to not
Boil the lie. Yeah.
well, and to not lash out at them, because we were approaching this experiment, which all this energy had been poured into, and it was to be very, very critical, and they were just getting dumber and sloppier and more uncooperative, and it was just getting, hard to handle. So finally I told them that they should go to their hammocks.
Complete
And,
control.
right, and our house looked like a lunar module, man. It was up on stilts, and you clamber up this little ladder and pull the ladder in after you. So I told them to go to their hammocks and that I would do everything. Dennis was going to make the sound. But that, okay, you will make the sound because you can hear it. And I will just run absolutely everything else. And so I boiled the yahe, and we were going to add tryptamine admixtures. We had identified what we thought, and it could have been, I'm not sure, Banisteria rubiana, which is another species which contains tryptamine. So I ground the admixtures. I took the yahe off the campfire, and I poured the admixtures in. Got it into the house, got the mushroom moved into the house, got it set on a piece of paper, and we were ready to go. And Dennis was just like, he could barely speak English. I mean, I just don't know what was going on. And the candle had not shortened in an hour. It was absolutely pitch dark outside, and there was and the insects were just screaming in the night, and you just couldn't see anything. So we said, a series of quantized energy levels have to be broken through in order to bond this thing. And this is, it's part psychology, part mythology, part physics, who knows. We said there would be we'd make 4 attempts before we would break out of the experimental mode. So we all took the yahe, we drank it, and it's just churning through your guts. And Dennis took 1 mushroom, just one, so that he could hear the tone come on. So we waited about 25 minutes, and then he said that he was ready, that it was loud and clear. And so he was in his hammock, and I said that we would blow out the light, and then he would make the yell, and then we would turn the light on, but that we wouldn't have the light on while the yell happened, because in experiments with tryptamines years before, people have spasms of the facial musculature that can be fairly hair-raising for the observer. If you've ever seen a tantric multi-armed entity with the rolling tongue, the bulging eyes, that kind of thing, disturbing. So we decided, we blew out the candle, right, and he revved it up. And then there was a very loud thump, and I was afraid of an epileptic seizure. That was the other thing we were riding herd on, because you get into these places with DMT, and the electrical structure of your body can be enhanced to the point where you trigger convulsions and this and that. So we got the light back on, and he had fallen out of his hammock, and he was lying on the floor very groggily. So I got up and I just set him up on the floor, just sort of, sit up. And he did it 3 more times. And the last time it just went on, and I just couldn't believe what was going on. Just, and this sound, and just crazy. So the last time he did it, and there was dead silence for an instant, and then from like 1.5 miles away at the mission, you could hear the cock crow. It just followed instantly afterwards. And I said, ay. He had said that if it worked, the mushroom would be obliterated. The absolute zero phenomenon would explode the cellular material, and then what would be left would be a standing waveform, a violet ring of light, approximately the size of the mushroom, and that this would be, the holding mode of the
ghost
of the lens or whatever it was, and that from that point on, then you take command of it. Whose DNA it is, they are it. I mean, it is you. It's just a mind which you can see and hold in your hand, and it's indestructible because it's actually all space and all time. It's the universe, but it's a monad, if you're into Leibniz, a monadic particle which contains all space and time, including your own mind. And so we looked at the mushroom, and it had at this point for me been, I just didn't understand what was going on, and he clearly knew what he wanted to do, and the idea was so outlandish that I thought we might as well give it a try, because, why not? This is what we're here to do, to explore the shamanic dimension, to find out what's going on. As he climbed down to look at it, he was wearing a gray ruana. The shadow fell across the mushroom and divided it exactly half and half. And he said, it's the plant. Very good. I mean, I felt better than I had ever felt before. I just couldn't believe what seemed to be happening. And it was about a 10 or 15-minute walk to these people's house. And by now it was like 7:30 in the morning, and the sun was well up in the sky, and it was just a beautiful day. And I could walk along across this pasture, and I would say, Dennis? And the response was instantaneous. It was just like thought. And I kept, it confused me. I mean, I just kept stopping and doing this and sitting down in the grass and, just... Is it all right? What is it? I don't know. I can't understand what it means. And I walked to the river, and I got Sarah and Michael, and I said, and by this time, well, I had done some experiments with it. Like I had said, Terence, first experiment, who owns this saucer? Terence? Was very much like talking to yourself. And so then I said, Dennis? And it was instantly there, just ready to do business. So then I said, McKenna, and it was still there. And so I realized that I couldn't reach it with my first name, but I could reach it with my last name. And I couldn't... I just couldn't understand what was going on, is what it basically comes down to. So I went to the river and I got them and I said, it isn't a visible, it isn't a standing waveform hologram of a mind like we thought. It isn't clear what it is, but it's very strange. It seems to be a teaching, something about a mantra. If you come... if you come to the forest, we'll give it to you. We'll just tell you. And this was the other thing he had said in the final hours, that the rising sun, that the ray, the dawn darkness line, as it swept around the world in a 24-hour period from the moment when the thing had happened at La Chorrera, that people were doing this, that in every city in the world, traffic was coming to a halt and factories were coming to a halt and people were standing around realizing that it had completely slipped. Well, that someone somewhere had broken through and that it wasn't a day like any other day. And so I got Sarah and Michael, and as we closed distance with the house in the jungle, I kept coming upon Dennis's clothing, more and more pieces of his clothing hurled into bushes, and he had thrown away everything, including his glasses, which he can't see anything without. And we got to the hut. And he, well, I don't know, everyone took off their clothes and prepared to receive the teaching, which they duly received immediately without fanfare. And then everyone sat down and started contacting this thing, asking questions. I took off my clothes because Dennis had insisted. Well, the thing seemed to be our understanding of it, what was happening. See, what's hard to understand is that this thing called the teacher was present throughout this whole thing, and that, but it tells you what to do. In other words, the situation isn't remaining static. This thing is telling you what to do all the time. It would tell you things like, well, a perfect example.
Like how to wash the pots.
Right, it would tell you how to wash the pots. It would say, you think you're enlightened? This is one of the trips. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Well, this voice or this presence was there, right? And it said, take off your clothes. Throw everything away. That was it. It said everything is breaking. All objects are no good to you now. Throw everything away. You don't need it anymore. And so we thought what would happen is we would give them the teaching, we would untie our hammocks from the house, and we would take nothing but our hammocks and go naked into the jungle, tie them in trees. We would get into these hammocks, and then you would get into the hammock and you would explore the mode, because clearly you could do much more than simply ask and answer questions. The door was standing open. God knows what you could do. And I thought what would happen is that I thought that you would start from where you had been the moment the joint was forged, and that time would run backward. And so that we would see ourselves at La Chorrera, and then going down the trail to El Encanto, and then up the river to Leguizamo, and then back to Bogota, and back to Canada, and that at each point you would meet the people that you had lived your life with, and you would say, we got it. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't offend you too much back in 3D. It's all over now. It's just all over. And that you would see, and I could see people. I immediately reached out for Watson and Diana and all these people, and I could just reach them and say, right, we're in the Amazon. Oh, you've heard. Well, that's it. And, now we're going home or someplace. And it had this utterly, I was in tears most of the time. It was just peculiar. It was all about how you found it. This is it. It's all over with. There is no more. And within a few hours, the superstructure of human civilization is going to collapse, and you're just going to go to Jupiter, to the stars, away. It's all over.
Is this all happening in the jungle? You took your hands off?
Right.
No, we didn't really.
Well, we hung them up. We did it in the house. And I started through doing this. And then it became apparent that something was wrong, right? Something was wrong. It was that expectation was outrunning reality. Exactly. Nothing had happened. So then it came out that no one could hear Dennis except me.
He thought we were all screaming.
Right?
You were all what?
Just grooving and listening to the same
And they were all actually
wondering what was going on.
saying,
Oh,
what's going on? So then we entered the next phase, which was a period of confusion, which was all about, look, I'm down, where are you? Okay, we're both down, now where are they? And Dennis he was disengaging. He no longer, you would talk to him and he didn't know you were talking to him. He would break into conversations because he didn't know anyone else was speaking.
And he wouldn't ever stop talking.
He wouldn't stop talking. That was the other thing. He wouldn't stop talking. And it was all about, now, where are we? What's happening? So we laid in our hammocks for a couple of hours, and it gradually grew apparent to me that, this apologizing back through time trip, it wasn't working. I mean, I could reach these people, but the intensity seemed to be fading, and we were coming into a very sort of confusing dimension. And then began what I guess is the bummer. The bummer didn't really emerge till the second day, because we didn't know what was going on. Finally, it was concluded by everyone except me. Right, he'd thrown away his glasses. So it was a crisis, but it was not yet out of hand. So the general consensus was, Yahé is very strange. We just have to wait a few hours and these people will come down. That was everybody's conclusion except Dennis's and mine. Dennis, it was no longer possible to communicate with him exactly. My conclusion was that something had happened, that he had done something, that some kind of peculiar principle had been manipulated, but that it wasn't like we thought it was, and now I didn't know where we were. But I was calm, or I was not, I at least, was participating in the social karma and answering questions. And even though there were tears of joy streaming down my face, I wasn't yet twisted out of the mode. And so said, we'll wait for tomorrow. Dennis will come down. So we waited. The next morning, Dennis was not down at all. In fact, during the night, while everyone was sleeping, Dennis had wandered miles away and gone to the Choro, and which was, tremendous. I mean, could kill you in an instant, and had climbed up into this tree. Like the waterfall, the Choro. And he had climbed up into this tree, and he had gone, he said, to the center of the Milky Way, or he had just gone a very, very great distance. He had taken the shamanic journey, absolutely, ni plus ultra, the climbing into the tree, the whole thing, just out and gone. So then we entered into a thing which lasted about 16 days, and is just, the chaos of La Chorrera, which was he very, very slowly got better, meaning got more coherent. He said that he said that the experiment had catapulted him to the edge of the Riemann geometry, and that he had to come back in, and that he was regressing inward through level after level after level. And very strange things went on during this period. He could hear my mind working. He was telepathic. There's no doubt about it. He could recite things that happened to me in Nepal He would do it in my voice. He would do perfect voice imitations of my mother, my father, all these people, become them, just do it perfectly. But then all this other stuff about late 20th century history and building the lens and the end of time and the discovery of the fourth dimension and this thing which was in front of us a few years in time and how it was linked up to Egypt, to acacia tryptamine cults, to Tibet 20,000 years ago, to pre-Pinpo shamanic magic, all this stuff, just regurgitating it, talking constantly, telepathic. I didn't sleep for 14 days, and I did not sleep a wink. I felt great. The reason it was very strange was because had Dennis been where he was and everyone else been normal, the conclusion would be, he's toxically schizophrenic, we have to get out of here. What muddied the water considerably was me, because I was able to answer questions and I was, for all practical purposes, perfectly normal except for one thing, which was I insisted that everything was all right and that Dennis knew exactly where he was at, that he would be okay, and that he had done what he said he was going to do, and that people should relax. And the reason I did this, or the reason I was in this place, was because it became very clear that though I had not known anything about how he did the experiment or the theory or anything, that from that dawn moment when we piled out of our hammocks to look at the mushroom, something was very, very bizarre about me, that something had happened to me. And it was true. I mean, I was just in a very, very strange place. I am in a very strange place. I knew it was all about having very close contact with this thing that was like the teacher, because it lets you know things. It's all about, beyond any possibility of argument, you know things which you couldn't possibly know. And simple things as well.
Well, Kumi, you did all this too.
Right.
What did you feel like?
Nothing, that's what's so strange. That's why we think maybe it has something to do with like genetics, in the sense that they were brothers.
Yeah.
Because nothing happened to me at all.
Right, and we thought it would happen to him.
And these other people seem to get, sort of strange. Not strange, but just sort of like they couldn't understand at all what was happening, and they wouldn't try, and they completely rejected us.
Right, they behaved very oddly. Everyone behaved oddly, like everyone thought everyone else was crazy, but everyone actually, from their own
Was
normal,
normal.
behaved very oddly.
True.
And this teaching thing, and it just said, the main thing it said was, relax, don't worry. But it said, relax, don't worry, because there's something you have to get straight about. And, your brother will be fine, that's all right, don't worry. These other people, they'll take care of that, don't worry. But listen, you have to get this down. And it was all about something which I had to get down. Within hours after the experiment, this started impinging on me, something that I have to figure out. And we were in the Amazon 14 days. Sarah organized an emergency rescue operation that cost us hundreds of dollars, airplanes flying in to get my brother. And I had just said, it's okay, he's enlightened, it's all over. I won't obstruct what you're doing, but I won't cooperate with what you're doing. I don't care. It's all over as far as I'm concerned. Finished. And it just drove her out of her tree. But all kinds of things were going on which were so strange. There's an Irish saying, poetry is made by the edge of running water. As I approached the choro, I could make rhyme. And the closer I got to the water, the more intense the rhyming became, until there was nothing left but rhyme. And
things in the sky.
Things in the sky, right. Things in the sky, until finally it was all about, we were still after this lens-shaped object. And what the teacher said, or what the teacher told me in the first few days after the experiment was, you almost got it. You didn't quite get it. Or rather, it used the metaphor of condensation. It is condensing. It is here. It was like perfect alchemical metaphor. The stone is everywhere. It is here. And Dennis would say, I can see it. It's 250 feet away to the left. It's down near the water hole, hovering above the water. And each day it would get closer in. Just freaking. There were these freak lightning storms and all this. And slowly I noticed that meteorological phenomenon tended to concentrate in the southeast. And I began to look there. And whenever I would look, there would be rainbows. And other people could see these rainbows. In other words, we didn't get anything absolutely empirical out of this at this point, but Kumi can vouch that it was pretty peculiar. And on the 16th day or the 14th day or something, in the afternoon, I walked across the pasture and I was looking to the southeast, and I saw a spectrogrammatic diffraction in the sky. Not a rainbow, but a patch of a rainbow, a round place that was spectrogrammatically diffracted. And I got down to the river and they were washing clothes. By this time there had been karma with the mission people, and Dennis had been moved to a house by the river because they were afraid he would run into the jungle, which was nonsense. And he had pitched everything out of this room, including the window casing, which he had ripped out. He was enormously strong. And I sat on the rocks and I looked across the river in the southeast again, and I saw again the spectrogrammatic diffraction in the sky. And I said to Kumi, do you see a rainbow across the river? And she looked and she said no. And by this time I had stopped forcing my opinions on people because I was regarded as nuts, not incoherent, but that I couldn't be trusted or couldn't be relied on because I believed it was true. That was my flaw. And so I kept watching across the river, and I saw this spectrogrammatic thing intensify. And so I said to her, now do you see a rainbow? And she looked and she said, yes, there. And I said, right, there. And I hadn't slept for, it was in the sky. It was like a shaft of colored light. And so the teacher said, instantly the feedback from my mind said, this is the place, this is the sign, watch here. And I hadn't slept for many days and had no need to sleep. And I didn't pamper myself at all. I mean, I was lugging stuff and just ecstatic. And I would go to the water hole for water and forget to take the flashlight because I could see in the dark when it was absolutely pitch dark and just so spaced. When I would listen to the teacher, it was just pounding in my head all the time. And when I would sit down in the forest and listen to it, I would slip into so intent a state of listening that I wouldn't notice what my hand was doing. And after I'd been listening for a few minutes, I would look down and I would have unconsciously gathered twigs together and placed them in a pile to light a fire. And this was what this thing did. It told you, it imparted a very strange kind of basic information. For instance, you would need firewood, and you would confront a dead tree, and it would tell you to take the exterior branches and leave the interior part. And it told you there was a way to do everything, and that you must do everything this way, and not to worry. That was the other thing. It was all about how it doesn't depend on you. It doesn't depend on you so much that you can relax and relax and relax like you've never relaxed before because it's all taken care of. But so anyway, I watched the southeast. I hadn't slept for 10 days. And I watched all night long. And I had seen, the day before, I had seen lens-shaped clouds in the southeast, in the same place. So about 4:30 in the morning, across the jungle, there were lens-shaped clouds. There were 3 of them. And they just were hanging on the horizon. And I was just sitting there watching them, and they began to migrate toward each other. And then there were 2, and then there was 1, and then it broke into 8, and then it started this declining migration again. And when there was 1 again, I heard this, and it just came across, and I could see an aerial vehicle of non-human origin.
That's directly over you or stuff.
It passed directly over me. I thought, and I have never ever seen anything like that. I mean, I'm a skeptic. I've seen things on dope, and people will argue, well, you hadn't had any sleep for 11 days. I grant you that. And all I can tell you is that from where I was at, it looked to me like it was not a hallucination. It looked to me, everything else was perfectly stable. I felt quite normal and quite down. I was panic-stricken.
Did you go along?
Did it come
Did you go?
to it?
No, did you? Did it move you from your place?
The saucer?
Yeah.
I stood up. I thought it was all over. I knew that we were going to leave the next day, that the emergency plane would be there the next day. And I thought, now we're going to meet the teach. And now it's all over. And I stood up. I had been sitting, and I stood up, and my knees were knocking together, and I felt very sick, and I was on the, sounds like Carlos Castaneda, always sick at his stomach. And I was just standing on this rock at the edge of the river, just saying, I'm not afraid, it doesn't matter, I understand, it's okay, and it just passed over, and it was gone. And the next day, the rescue plane came.
Which Dennis insisted was
A partial condensation. We got to Leticia, we got to Bogota. By the time we got to Leticia, Dennis was coming down. It was more or less now granted. Because, see, my position was, every day he's getting better. Why don't you just relax? I can tell that he's getting better. And I could, but they couldn't. And so it was all about, he's not getting better, he's lost for all time, and you may have to be committed as well. And listen, my sister's a shrink, and I know about these things, and no, it's going to be this way. So by the time we got to Bogota, he actually was down. He was he wasn't totally all right, he was very, very shaky, and very, very bummed by any mention of fourth-dimensional superconductive bonds, Yahweh, shamanic. He just said, look, I've had it. I just want to be a botanist. Never again. Holy God. And so it seemed to devolve upon me, because I was going nuts. I mean, hysterical, ecstatic, crazy, because I kept insisting that it was ahead of us, that the thing would come again, that the condensation process was continuing, and that there was something we had to understand about time. There's something we have to understand about time. Every day is somehow like 4 other days. What is the mathematical relationship to this? Well, to make a story already too long, suddenly very short. We went to Bogota, we went to Southern Colombia, we went back to Bogota, we went to Berkeley, we were in Berkeley 3 months, we went back to the Amazon, we went back to La Chorrera, because I had decided when the day was that it would come. We went back into the Amazon, down the river again, through over the jungle. We waited. The cows were gone. But the important thing is, the teaching was more or less continuous up until just a couple of months ago. And what it teaches, when you listen after months and months and months of actually doing nothing but listening, sitting in a room, listening intensely, I mean, it's very intense. What it teaches is, it propounds an idea which has to be examined by experts in order for any judgment to be given on it. It's an idea about time. It's an idea which concerns the I Ching. It's an idea which is very concrete. I mean, it now has almost the level of mathematical rigor. Nothing that I have told you is in this book. This book is very... how to do it. The hypercarbellation method is there.
What's this book? I didn't catch it when the first minute.
It's right here in manuscript. It showed me how to do something with the I Ching that maybe nobody ever has known how to do this. Maybe the Chinese knew how to do it once and lost it thousands of years ago. But it just taught me fourth dimensional physics using the I Ching. And I can teach this now. I mean, it's very complicated. It won't be corralled within the confines of a conversation. It enables you to have as much knowledge of the future as it's possible to have. The future is not absolutely determined. There is not, in other words, a future to see in which every event is determined and we can say, let's look in on this apartment 3 weeks from now. It isn't like that. That isn't how the universe is put together. The future does not have that nature of already completedness, but it is conditioned. And the I Ching, there's something, a mathematical operation, a graphing operation and a mathematical operation that can be performed on the I Ching that will give you a way to, in a certain sense, know everything. And it's very hard for me to judge it. I can do things that are very impressive from a mathematical point of view. In other words, I can use the I Ching. I can predict eclipses with the I Ching. I can tell you the phase that the moon is in, and I can tell you the sign that the moon is in, using nothing but the I Ching.
Can you do it all the time?
Oh yes, there's not magic. It's quite complex, but it's teachable. It's not magic. That's what's so far out about it. Magic would be no good.
Do you want to teach it to somebody?
Oh, I'll teach it to anyone who's interested. Anyone who reads this book and understands it knows how to do it.
It's not that complex.
It isn't.
It's not complex like that.
Right, it doesn't require simultaneous differential calculus. Well, that's like asking someone what is the advantage of knowing. It has no advantage, it is simply to know. However, it has a peculiar liberating quality which perhaps can't be rationally connected to the content of the idea. In other words, to know what's going to happen, or to know, well, it just frees you. It's possible that, in a certain sense, all these states of liberation are nothing more than perfect knowledge of the contents of eternity. That if you know what is contained in time, from its beginning to its end, you are somehow no longer in time. Even though you still have a body and you still eat and do what you do, you've discovered something which liberates you into a kind of all-at-onceness, which is very satisfying. There are other satisfactions arising out of the theory which aren't touched on in this formulation, because, well, times are related to each other. Things happen for a reason, and the reason is not a causal reason. It's a reason which, in physical terms, it's a quantum mechanical phenomenon. There is a wave which conditions events on all levels, and this wave is expressed throughout the universe on a number of extremely discrete levels, and it causes atoms to be atoms, and cells to be cells, and minds to be minds, and stars to be stars. It's in a certain sense a kind of physics, but it's metaphysics with mathematical rigor. In other words, what I'm telling you is not a belief in the sense of Buddhism, or it's a scientific proposition. You're welcome to disprove it. This is what I'm attempting to do. It has to be disproven, because if we can't disprove it, it must be true. And if it's true, then the world will be a very strange place, whether there is a saucer or not, because the mere existence of this idea makes the universe or the world of men a very strange place, because it's a strange idea.
Well, what about your brother?
What does he think?
Well, what does he do now? And also, do you have to, put your mind in the Ask Dennis?
Oh, no. All of that was just a lot of static. It isn't like that at all. It's simply another mental dimension in your own head that you open up, and it tells you things. Well, you don't know me, so it might not seem particularly strange, but I'm not a mathematician. I hate mathematics. This idea is entirely mathematical.
How is his brother, though?
Oh, he's fine. He came back to the United States. We lived with him 6 months in Boulder. He wrote half of this book.
Can he do all this stuff too? Apparently not.
Well, it isn't a matter of...
It's not like doing stuff.
Yeah, it isn't like doing stuff. Anyone can do it who has assimilated enough of the idea to understand it. In other words, we don't even know if this business of taking these drugs and hearing this sound and doing something to your DNA, that may be bullshit. ESR may not work that way. That may be to a real physicist just a grotesque travesty on real physical facts. But what we do know is that after he did this experiment, a number of very strange ideas forced their way into my mind. They were all integrated. They forced their way into my mind. I had to express them, and it took months and months of graphing and numbers like you can't imagine.
Well, did anything like that force its way into his mind?
The way to do it in the 3 days at La Churrera.
But since then?
No.
What kind of things are going through his mind?
Well, we sort of muddled the experiment because we lived together 6 months. Now he knows the theory as well as I do, the part I developed. So, you know how Don Juan talks about a way of seeing, how you must see, you must do something, you must see. Well, a world construct is a way of seeing. You all see the Newtonian way, or perhaps if one or two of you are physicists, you see the Einsteinian way. But a way of seeing is a set of concepts which, when they exist in your head, they reconstruct all your input to make it different. And if you assimilate the theory that was forced upon us, you see everything differently.
Mm-hmm. It's not an abstraction in any way to your mind.
No, not at all.
And how's your direct perception of, like, anything you're doing in this room or what's coming down? And as you walk down the street, do you see things, everything is different to you now?
Everything is infused with, yes, there's something I know. If you believe this theory, and I have to believe it because it hasn't been proven, but it may be possible to disprove it. If it's not possible to disprove it, then you must believe it. And in that case, everybody is going to have to make this shift if the idea actually gets out. Many ideas may be very good and simply perish. They don't get good PR. But this idea causes a fundamental reconstruction of reality. And it can be taught. It is what I always thought enlightenment must be, which is understanding. Just simply that. Just an understanding, not a hallucination or an ability to zap people or levitate. It's a way of understanding. And when you understand this way, it seems as though you've ended the program of understanding. And it doesn't deny any body of knowledge. It just augments one. And there's an argument for it on the physical level. The idea is very complicated. I mean, it touches many things. It touches quantum physics and submolecular biology, DNA structure. Because here's the thing. Though the idea that I developed may not have been caused by what my brother did in the Amazon, his theory and his trip, I actually assume that it is, that it's directly caused, that he did something and I'm getting a kind of funny feedback off my DNA. And what it's giving me is what it has stored in it. And since that's everything, the task is to create a symbol structure that will make it coherent, because everything, if you actually had everything on a tape or a DNA molecule and you played it, it would just be a tremendous mishmash. You have to create structural over-concepts.
It takes forever to play it because it would be an infinite thing.
But you have to make it into a mandala. Right.
Yeah.
That's what is playing.
Right.
Right, exactly.
That's the right speed on the place.
But you have to have a concept so that as it plays, you understand the melody. And this theory is, here's all I can say about it. It's a concept which, when it plays in my head, I understand the melody. I don't think I'm too mush-headed. If you may, you're welcome to. I'm frankly interested in disproving the theory, because it must be disproven. Ideas this good, a lot of pressure has to be put on them. My attitude is entirely scientific. I want to break it. And I know what the pieces of evidence are that I cannot throw away and be true to myself. But I haven't had very good luck breaking the theory. Researching to it has done nothing but to substantiate it. Right, we've been at this 2 years. I knew nothing about quantum physics, about hierarchical structures, about the mathematics of general systems. I knew nothing, holography, all this shit. And these were the concepts which forced themselves into my sphere of attention. And it hasn't been possible to find a glaring technical error in the method at any point.
So what then do you think that these so-called flying saucers really is? What kind of thing do you think it really represents?
It's the ingression of a higher dimensional epoch, which reverberates through three-dimensional history. It's a shock wave being generated by an eschatological event at the end of time. In other words, natural laws are not universal constants. They're very, very slowly evolving flux phenomenon. For instance, the speed of light, which is taken as a universal constant, it has only been measured in the last 100 years. So it's entirely induction to then extrapolate the principle of its stability to all time. There are epochs in the universe.
To point that out.
Right.
That was one of his beginning axioms.
Any good scientist knows that induction is a leap to faith. Science is founded on the principle of induction, which is faith. That's what this theory challenges. It says the fact that when you did A, B resulted does not mean that when you do A again, B will result again.
It's never possible to prove that.
Oh, I know.
There's no way you can prove
right.
that.
This is a paradox. Yes, see, space was thought to be, before Einstein, a dimension in which you put things. When you had something that you had to put somewhere, you put it in space, and space was visualized as somehow analogous to emptiness. But then Einstein pointed out that space is a thing which has a torque, or it is affected by objects. In other words, from an idea, to the place where you put things, to a thing. Space is a thing. It's affected by gravitational field. Light passing through a gravitational field in space will be bent because the space through which it travels is bent. Space is a thing, and this was part of what the Einstein thing was about, but not the major part. Now, what we're proposing in a nutshell is that time, which was also previously a place where you put things. I mean, time is not a thing, it's where things happen, but it is not itself a thing. We say, no, it is a thing, and time changes. There are different kinds of time, and as these kinds of time come and go in their cyclical progression on their many levels, situations evolve, which are the responses of matter to the conditioning imparted to it by the time
In space.
and the space. Right. These two things condition matter. It was always matter which was thought to be real, and actually matter has almost the quality of thought, and matter thinks what it thinks according to two flux phenomena which are in interrelationship, the space-time continuum. And we have, well, there are some axioms. I don't know, it's hard to go into this but there are some axioms. One of them is taken from Leibniz, who was a very creative man who didn't really get his just desserts. Leibniz talked about monads, monadic space.
They told me he was crazy in school.
They told you Leibniz was crazy?
Yeah, they said he wasn't too smart. I mean, well, not that he wasn't smart, but he was cracked. Except that he had a good one basic good thing.
Right, he invented the differential calculus at the same time Newton.
He was great.
He was a genius.
Well, that's, all I got is reduced through the instructor, and the instructor had a low opinion of him.
Yeah.
Leibniz was 400 years ahead of Newton. He was the true father of the
when you
modern
mentioned him
era.
before, I automatically translated into my opinion that not that I had of him, but was handed down to me, and I said, oh. And that notation was there in my mind.
You realize that you're being
Because I'm
programmed.
not, right, exactly. But I'm not a scientist, so I'm not qualified. Or I don't even have any scientific training, really. So I'm not
Well, he's a
qualified.
philosopher, but
Yeah,
his
right.
ideas didn't make sense at the time because mathematical systems to handle them, I mean, it requires matrix algebra, which wasn't really invented until this century. But he spoke of monads, which were infinitely reduplicated everywhere in the universe, and which contained all places in them. They were not here now. They were everywhere, all the time, in each place. And they were, each one was like every other one. But in the way they interconnected, they built up a larger continuum fabric, which and that this general outline of your memory structure cannot be destroyed until you
Exit.
just core it out with a brain drill. You can destroy up to 95% of the brain, and still it's as though the memory isn't stored anywhere. It's as though it's a gas which permeates the brain everywhere. This is holography. All of your memories are in each part. And in a holographic plate, every part of the image is in every part of the hologram. So you can take a holographic plate of Mount Fuji, right, and cut it in half and throw away half, and you still have Mount Fuji, and you cut it in half again, and you still have Mount Fuji, and it's infinitely divisible. It is made up of an infinite number of tiny images of Mount Fuji, each of which, in combination with its fellows, presents one image. And quantum physics says things like this. I mean, not things exactly like this, but it says the electron is not somewhere, sometime. The electron is a cloud of probabilities, and that's all you can say about it. And we sort of hypothesize a particle which has that kind of quality, but if you want to say time is a thing, as we said for purposes of conveying the idea, then the obvious question is, well, if time is a thing, what is the smallest thing that a time can be made out of?
Or is there something that is contained in that's even bigger than time? Like, in other words, what's beyond time?
Well, but the scientific method is to divide toward the small.
That's just a personal question.
The scientific thing is to find out if it's discrete. You can say there are units of it.
So what you're looking
Like
for
gravity,
is
they can't
a
find it.
chronon, right, which is a particle of time. And these chronons, which we we don't actually hypothesize that. We say the chronon exists, but it isn't distinct from the atom. The atom is a chronon. The atom is just far more complicated than people have thought. But these chronons, then, by the combination of their characteristics...
Is the chronon then the same thing as the monad in effect?
Yeah.
I mean, they're interchangeable as a definite, vague definition.
Well,
general
That's
definition.
also
not rigorously
synonymous with
interchangeable.
an atom, in a certain sense.
Because of are you referring to the atom's rhythmical structure, which creates the time?
It just mirrors it. Everything mirrors it.
Yeah, well, in other words, it's the tendency of physics to divide toward one particle. There may be atoms and chronons. Chronons may not be reducible to atoms, but I suspect that what we're looking for is one particle, which makes matter, space, time, and energy, and is probably the electron, but not the electron in the Heisenberg-Born description. That describes the properties of the electron, which account for physical matter. But the electron must be more complicated than that, because it exists in a universe where minds and organisms arise. So we have to describe the atomic qualities that would allow a particle to, in certain states, coalesce into a living organism or a thinking organism. And
Intelligence.
on the highest level, but even a T4 phage bacteria is a staggering accomplishment for the Heisenberg-Bohr atoms.
But that's intelligence.
True.
It's nothing more than just the fact that it's capable of doing it, and for some reason it does it.
Right, these tiny particles in aggregates of tens of billions produce stuff. Stars, empty space, organisms, matter. But the trick is, the Heisenberg-Bohr bit explains the physical universe. It doesn't explain organism or mind. So we have to overlay over that atomic model.
It doesn't get to the world of man.
Right. Qualities. We have to imbue the atom with qualities that will let us understand how we could exist, how we could arise out of its substratum. And I wouldn't claim we've done that, but we've indicated, I think, the intellectual avenues that will have to be followed to do it. It has to do with cyclical units in hierarchical structures to generate kinds of continuums that move toward different kinds of closure. The person who has actually laid the firmest foundation for understanding this stuff philosophically is someone who, in my mad chase after gurus, I ignored completely my whole life until the last 6 months, and who is hands down one of the most powerful thinkers that Western man has ever produced, and that's Alfred North Whitehead, who's just, he understood. We haven't gotten into anything that his method didn't anticipate. And I thought I read everybody. And it turns out, I had just skipped this entire school of thinkers. And that's as close as you can come within the confines of formal philosophical method. Whitehead has done it. His cosmology is real, and it accounts for minds and organisms and a number of things that are verboten by the Cartesian approach. Marvelous. All these things. It turns out I didn't know anything about any of this stuff when we went into the Amazon, but there are thinkers who move in these directions. General systems theory is the idea that any process can be related through a mathematical equation to any other process simply by virtue of the fact that they both are processes. In other words, the overthrow of a dictator, the explosion of a star, the fertilization of a nova, all these things should be amenable to one set of mathematical descriptions because they're processes, and they haven't announced a definitive set of equations yet, but there's a lot of progress happening in this field.
And that's really what Einstein was trying to do.
Well, that's a unified field theory where you're trying to bring gravitation and magnetism into agreement with the values you've established for light and these other things.
Yeah, on a narrow basis. But he also had the philosophical idea of, ascending as far as he possibly could.
Right. If we had a perfect philosophical mirror of the universe, I would be able to, by applying our philosophical method, tell Martin how much change he has in his pocket. Because since he actually has whatever amount of change he has in his pocket now, so that it's an established fact, it could be pre-calculated.
There must be some mathematical formula which produces a
the necessities of occurred existence, although not the necessities of existence about to occur. Although there too, there are boundary conditions operating, but they are boundary conditions, not absolutely determined. In other words, we know that 10 minutes from now, this room will exist. It's a boundary condition which will define the next 10 minutes in this space-time coordinate. But we don't know who will be in this room 10 minutes from now. That is free to be determined by the people in it. Well, this is the inductive thing. You can't. There's no absolutely philosophically rigorous way of establishing that. But you make the inductive leap to faith that has to do with accumulated experience. We project that it will be a boundary condition. You're right. In between now and then there could be an earthquake and this building may not be standing in 10 minutes. However, for that to happen, the boundary conditions will have to have been disrupted very rapidly and in an unexpected manner.
Yeah, but the thing that's so curious is the way that it constantly occurs.
That's what our map of the chronon would allow you to predict. That's also one of the problems with it, because if you hypothesize a spiral structure to time, where it keeps gathering itself into tighter and tighter spirals, then you inevitably have to hypothesize a final time when it isn't clear what happens, but something happens which breaks down the physical laws you've established in one epoch, so that imagining what would happen in that condition has caused science to really shy away from predicting that. Although Western religions have no trouble whatsoever embracing the concept of final time.
Yeah.
And this may be, we would say within the context of our theory, that it argued for our theory because they were getting a reflection back through time, a ricochet, a distorted image of an apocalyptic event. When
Well, all you need for final time is no change.
True, but then all processes have to run down.
Yeah.
You only have no change when you have maximum entropy.
Right.
But you're assuming something when you say that. You're assuming that the laws of this space-time continuum are infinitely linearly extendable into the future. And in a spiral universe, you don't assume that. You assume that a final time might have to do with passing out of one set of laws which are conditioning existence and into another set of laws conditioning existence during a shorter duration.
If you just step out from the whole mode, then the spiral doesn't even look like a spiral anymore. It just straightens out or stays equidistant or something.
No, you see it as a spiral, but you know your place in it, and you know when the transition to new epochs will occur. And you can see this in the physical world. I mean, the planet is 2.5 billion years old, the first turn of the spiral, right? And then life appears. And what's happening if you examine this planet, which is the only thing we can really examine in depth, is all processes on this planet are steadily accelerating in their reaction speed. I mean, a planet swings through space 2 billion years before life appears. And the instant life appears, this mad scramble is on, and species appear and disappear, and this goes on for 1 billion years, and then suddenly thinking species appear. From the the dumb confrontation with the stone to the starship is 20,000 years top. And that's just, what could that be but the ingression into a new set of laws that are causing certain kinds of biodynamic aggregates to manifest very, very peculiar properties.
I mean, the ingression of some of the kind of laws onto the earth.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
Right, because we are made out of the same thing that rattlesnakes and poplar trees are made out of. But we trigger the energies that light stars on the surface of this planet. We do that. We can create temperatures of zero absolute. And we can do this because though we're made out of mush and mud, we have minds, and we know about the detour through tools. And so we can build tools which can unleash energies that in any other situation in the universe occur under very, very different conditions than in a laboratory. At the center of stars, these things happen. And we, by the use of mind, which is what is mind, who knows? 20,000 years from the stone flint to the starship. But then you can see, it's still picking up. There are yet more spirals to compress. From the Model T Ford to the starship, 60 years. From the fastest man on Earth being able to move 30 miles an hour to the fastest man on Earth being able to move 9 miles a second. 60 years. And it's all about, and everything is just this bell curve of expanding potentiality. This has just reached vertical gain. It's just going crazy. We threaten every species on the planet because we have built atomic bombs, and they're everywhere. Every species on the planet can feel that. The planet as an ecological entity can react to that kind of pressure. It's 3 billion years old. It can deal... all the stuff about man is not natural, man opposes nature, ecocide, it's ridiculous. We couldn't have arisen unless there was a purpose of ours which fit into the planetary ecology. And it isn't clear what it is, but it seems to have to do with these enormous research instruments and crisis. We have put atomic bombs everywhere. We can dynamite the earth like a rotten apple. And why? And we don't know why. Surely not for the political and social reasons that are given. We're just simply a tool-building species that is itself the tool of a planetary ecology that has this perception of this fourth-dimensional mode, knows what the boundary constraints are, and is organizing life to transform itself.
Perhaps it's the natural slave and prey of some of the life forms.
It is.
Sure.
The sun. I don't know. I don't know where the mathematical rigor stops and you sub back in.
Did you say the sun?
There's something beyond the sun, right?
That is the answer.
Martin loves the sun. But it's a long rave, fairly peculiar. Very peculiar, as a matter of fact. It's hard to know what to think, because I don't like, well, it's just a phenomenon of all kinds of mental illness, that you have a vision of some kind of fantastically complicated thing, which just so happens to put you in the very center of everything. And, this does this. It's clinically pathological. We have enough humor to
They all do.
realize that. But I hope we have enough humor to not flip out behind it. That's the thing. If you don't realize the comedy of but you don't understand, there's something out there. All those 1950s movies with the Mexican peasants rushing in from the swamp, having encountered the dinosaur, and they're saying, it's there, and people just say, listen, and you're very excited, you should relax. That's why you have to have recourse to scientific method. Because if it's real, it can be proven in the calm confines of the laboratory. And if it isn't real, it should be dropped like a hot potato. It's psychic dynamite.
I think there's things that are real that can't be proven in the laboratory.
No.
I think everything real can be duplicated in the laboratory.
Well, no, this brings up, there are things that can't be proven in the laboratory, but they do not relate to the nature of space, time, matter, and energy. No, those things are, let me see, how did St. Thomas put it? Something about that which can be understood rationally. And so must it not be that the mind of man can encompass and understand all. That which is together must be together rationally. And therefore, man's mind can encompass God's universe and understand it in its entirety. In other words, a rational God is a God who leaves clues. An irrational God is a Gnostic nightmare and just leaves you nowhere, because an irrational God, you've just got an anthropomorphic form of Heideggerianism.
It seems to me that a universe that can be encompassed by the rational mind, that it's much smaller than...
You thought.
Smaller than I thought?
Right.
It would be smaller than I think.
It's smaller than you think. It is in fact an unbearable, it is in fact, the prison that you must break out of.
No, I think it's the rational mind that's smaller than we think.
But if by the universe you mean space, time, matter, and energy, this is just 3 dimensions and a continuum dimension. The universe, if by that you mean the realm where the higher geometricians have labored, the worlds of dimensions and those places, that is a fairyland of wonder indeed. But, I don't know, all this is fairly basic. In other words, whether you believe these things or not. Because maybe this is a grand old universe. And it is in fact, for sure. But it can only be enjoyed in its grandeur if you transcend it. If you grub around on a planet around a G-type star in some god-awful corner of the universe. But imagine, if you did your shopping behind the crab and, imagine what you can imagine if wishes were horses. Right? I mean, this was why this stuff was such a get-off, because it's fourth dimensional matter. You can do anything with it. So you just spread it out and climb on it and take her up to about 60,000 feet, attaching oxygen by the act of noting the need for same. And then you have, it's the flying saucer again.
Just climb inside it.
Well, since it's you, it's like putting on your mind like a wetsuit. Right. The flying saucer is the perfected human mind, and it waits warmly humming at the end of human history on this planet. When it is perfected, there will be an ontological mutation of the human form, the resurrection body that Christianity is all about.
He will feel that he created himself.
The
That'll be his illusion, man's.
man, right.
He'll say, yes, I have consciously evolved.
Right, this is the genius of our technology, the energies of life and death and time and space. We have created a mobile mind. We have created a ship which can cross the universe in the time it takes to think it, because that is what the universe is, a thought. And we now, the masters of thought,
That's for grass you left.
set out. And that's, however, he may discover that it may not be done that way. People may discover ahead of time that there is something out there calling them home. And then it will be that man's technology and this other thing, which is calling us home, will slowly meet. And it's all about the saucer. The saucer is a good metaphor. When Jung divined that the saucer was a human soul, he was right. I mean, he just didn't know what he meant quite. But that's what it is. And it's not so far away. That's the other thing. I mean, it may be near, it may be far, but to the best of our calculations, it's fairly near, or there'll be a near miss fairly near. The last time it came around was the relativity thing. Einstein and all those people. That was the last. We entered a new epoch then. And we will enter another one soon. But whether or not we're entering the final one, it's hard to tell, because when you're caught in the process, the uncertainty principle just makes it, any kind of rational appreciation of that, impossible. All these things, DMT is about death. And what is death?
What was that?
And it's very interesting. There was a lot of talk about this in the Amazon, and lots of other things. We just find ourselves in such a peculiar situation. I mean, having been born, being autonomous, open chemical systems which maintain themselves at equilibrium by eating, and we think, and what's that, and what are 3 dimensions, and what is energy? We just find ourselves in the strange position of being alive, having been born, going to die. And a lot of thinking is that this isn't so strange, that this happens in the universe, living things appear. And yet our physics, which can light the fires of the stars in our deserts, cannot explain away the strangeness of the fact of our being alive. Organisms are completely outside the range of physical explanation at this point for science. So what is it for? I mean, Shelley and Shakespeare and quantum theory, the paintings at Altamira. Who are we, and what is history, and what does it push for? Now we have atomic bombs. We should figure out soon, because we have unleashed some kind of process that is inimical to the planet and very, very final. I mean, we've triggered the final crisis for the planet. And we have done it, but we don't control it. No single one of us, Kissinger or anyone else, can call a halt to the fact that we're trapped in history, moving toward the unimaginable that gets more and more unimaginable as the information piles up about the nature of the situation we find ourselves in. It's strange.
Well, I got all the questions. You're listening along, and I'm just, everything I've been asking is, thinking is all coming out. Yeah, it's really strange.
Well, we should go pretty soon, don't you think? We've talked the day away. I've talked the day away. I've raved the day away. I don't do this rap very often. I used to do it constantly and bum people outrageously. Then I wrote this book and I'd hope not to have to do it anymore.
Is this going to be published shortly? Or are you trying to?
I'm trying, not very hard. The only publisher who's seen it has only published one book. So he...
If you have to, you can publish yourself.
Oh, I wouldn't do that. I believe in Darwinian selection of ideas. If this thing if there isn't a publisher who says, my God, I've got to claw open this boy's hand and press crackling buckos into it. If there's not a publisher who will do that, it's not going to get published. It's a pretty high hurdle for any book.
The daily just in my face.
One in your face, no one on windows.
Do you want to comment?
Don't want to spread myself too.
10 to 4.
Oh boy, we should go very shortly.
I really don't interrupt. You want to head?
Oh, I'm glad you like.
Yeah, I'd like to. I wish you get that book.
I'll leave this book with anyone who wants to read it.
I hope it's your Xerox copy.
It is
Yes,
actually.
actually, that's good.
I have a couple stuff. Take care.
Bye.
Nice
Enjoy.
meeting you.
Bye. Toodaloo.
See you guys later.
Bye, Drew.
It's very hard for people to read this book through to the finish. It's fairly dense. But
It's scientific.
it's sort of scientific. Quiet, I guess. The first half is mostly background.
Well, what happened to the other book you wrote? Because didn't you write another?
Oh yes, I wrote it and I rewrote it in Tokyo, and I just am not. This makes it obsolete. It was just a very crude cybernetic model to approach something which can be done very simply. It turns out. If this one is right, that doesn't interest me too much. That book I wrote, because there was a lot of political haranguing and social analysis, and this is much cleaner, I think. It's odd, but it's fairly... If you're of a particular bent, it gets you high to read it. Very particularly bent. If you read it, your effort should be to find a mistake, any kind of mistake on any level. And there are hundreds of opportunities for mistakes of minor and major sorts.
Don't you look at this at all?
Pretty long, 300 pages. It has 40 pages of illustrations. Make it go faster. It's sort of like the Warren Commission report. I mean, it's just an attempt. I came under a lot of pressure from Sal, from other people, and it was all about, man, get it straight. What was it? And make your position clear. You have to have a firm ontological basis for talking about all this stuff. So now, what are your definitions? What are your axioms? What's your method? So it's an effort to say all that could possibly be said clearly about the bit.
I see. Well, tell me, was this the scene in the jungle, Sarah calling in the airplanes? Was that what caused your falling out?
Pretty much, yeah.
It does sound like kind of writing.
Oh, it was just a matter of pride. The people thought we were ridiculously fucked up dudes for having to, get in there and then hit the panic button and fly out by emergency plane, and
Oh, yes, how embarrassing.
it just stung my pride. So we went back, Kumi and I. We lived there 6 months in ecstasy, and I wrote much of this book then. And
Did you take mushrooms?
there weren't so many, but we took them again, yeah. We didn't press it so hard. We got the ukuhe the second trip back. We actually got it, but it didn't get us off. So we sent it to Sweden, and they're analyzing it. It may not be ukuhe. They're very shifty people. The little man may have just simply screwed us to the wall. But
People everywhere. They're really shifty.
But it was good. We accomplished what we set out to do. We got the ukuhe. It was a success in every way. Sarah's just not accustomed to roughing it. I mean, I guess it was rough in the Gibson Desert and on these digs, but it's a different kind of rough. It's just bare wires, simple accommodations. But in the Amazon, it's just, you go days and days and days, and it's dangerous. Not terrifically, but you can't be asleep. The spraining her ankle thing's awful.
Yeah, but you can't be asleep no matter where you are, even in Brooklyn.
True. But as an urban person, I'm sure she's totally capable of taking care of herself in any situation.
Yes.
In India, she was just pop-eyed at Benares, and
She was completely freaked out.
and she stayed
She would
at
go in the street and
Right,
she
she was
refused
just-
to leave her bed.
she stayed in the $20 a day tourist hotel outside of town.
She was really freaked out.
It's a long tape.
It's longer than that rap. It's a long tape for sure. We're gonna have to split. I hope I didn't.
Well, Gary, I was going to say you're invited to stay and have some soup if you like.
Oh, we are going out tonight, and I think we better actually get back across the bay to see these people.